Okay, we're back on.
Hey, Tim.
So, hey, Mike. So, we've got three concepts here that we do in leadership training and in communication skills training. And I've got a feeling that the people who are watching this film, they'll look at these and they'll say, yeah, I know what these are. And I think many people may look at them and they'll say, I've been there, I've got the hat, I've got the t-shirt, I use these things. So, Mike, in your experience working with our customer in distribution, our customer in FMCG, with those specific two clients, how many people have you met so far who have got a structured approach to time management and who share their approach with their boss?
Wow. I mean, to answer the first one, some of them, and it's not maybe necessarily the structure that we have in front of us here, but some sort of structure and some sort of logic. Um, but sharing it with their boss, almost none of them. Almost none of them. And especially when we talk about our time management model here, the reason and benefit of sharing that and having that discussion with with your boss is almost always lost. So there's some success in that, and most people have seen our time management model, but the efficiency with which it's applied is very much lost. The other models, I mean, everyone knows about SMART goal setting. How many people use it? I would say almost none. Certainly not in an intentional sense. They might think, oh yeah, it is specific or it is achievable, but they haven't really sat down and gone through the list and said, is it smart? And as for decision making, whether you're direct or cooperative, I think a lot of people love the kind of thought experiment of who am I? What is my character? What is my personality? But the next time they go to make a decision, do they think about how they're making it? Most of the time, absolutely not.
Yeah. Now, we finished the last film with a little bit of a description of the Google, why Google made OKRs, at least in their world, famous. And we also work with a tech company. And the tech company is very good at doing a couple of things. And one of them is they plan. So their planning structure is done in such a way that every 2 weeks they get together. So a lead will get together with their teams, and so you've got one leader with a team of like 5 or 6 or 7 people, and they'll spend 2 hours making a decent plan. Yeah. And the plan will kind of map out the work that they're going to do, the top level work that they're going to do as a team for the next 2 weeks. Um, and then after that, in groups of two, and this is really best practice, yeah, they will start refining those plans and refining, what does that plan look like from a smart perspective, or what are the specifics of that plan? How does it then, what is it going to look like? Now, if we translate that into objectives and key results, we see a clear definition here. We've got defining what the objectives are. Why is it important? Why is it important today? Why is it important for the organization? Why is it important for our departmental boss? Why is it important for this initiative? Out of the 100 things that we could do, what's the one or two things that we're going to put our emphasis and energy behind over the next 2 weeks in our IT company's case? Having got agreement to that, then we move on to SMART and start refining those objectives into activities and actions, and how are we going to measure them? So from an OKR perspective, the key result and the initiatives are within that, setting and refining objectives piece. But, we've just said, and you've just said very clearly that the majority of organizations do not have a system where managers and leaders really systematically have a process of planning and then refining tasks and objectives. And the reason for that is because they don't have the organizational or personal discipline behind doing that. The reason that Google became effective or famous for their OKR way of working is because in tech industries, if you allow a computer programmer to work for more than 2 weeks without checking what they've done, they'll write something that you can't use. Yeah? Which means the industry defines the fact that you have to set an objective, refine it, and then check what they do over daily meetings, weekly meetings, and definitely 2 weekly meetings before reflecting and changing at the end of the 2 weeks. So most organizations are simply not like that. And as soon as that time frame becomes longer, like 1 month, 3 months, yeah, then it gets the requirement for check and control becomes less.
Really interesting, Tim. Do you want us to briefly talk through each of these three models?
Yeah, I mean, from time management to prioritization, we'll put the film in here as well for people who are interested in seeing what's behind that. But what's your essential summary of that?
So, firstly, this is a model that many people may have seen before. It's also known as Eisenhower's matrix. And effectively, you take all of your tasks on a kind of daily basis or weekly basis, and you plot them onto this graph where you have what is urgent on the x-axis and what is important on the y-axis. And you see we divide it into kind of four primary areas. So a lot of tasks you'll recognize fit into that bottom left box where we have the trash can. They're neither important nor urgent. Ideally, we want to be kind of removing those. But what we tend to see is so much of your time is lost in things that are not important or just urgent and require your time and attention. Maybe something's gone wrong. Maybe someone is coming to you and asking you to do things. But the top left-hand box where we see the I keeping a focus on the future is usually the box that is kind of left behind because these other things, these urgent things come along, these distractions come along. But our long-term goals, and actually I would argue many of our OKRs reside in that top left-hand box that can be lost. So plotting this out, figuring out where we spend our time, is the first step towards managing our time much better. And then we can have conversations around it. We can understand where other people's time is being lost and how maybe there's greater collaboration possible between you, your team, your boss, and the people around you. So I find this one really, really interesting and actually very influential. If you want to get somebody to help you, understanding their matrix is maybe one of the best ways that you can go about doing that.
And I heard a great thing the other day. An organization that is relatively clear on their long-term goals, so top left, yeah. But the leadership team, the top leadership team, is constantly looking for the next new shiny thing, yeah, which for them looks really cool. So it comes in top right, yeah.
Mhm.
And then the organization jumps on it because it's the next new shiny thing at the expense of the long-term goals. Yeah. Yeah, firefighting is something we want to avoid. Yeah.
Mhm. There's
Uh,
a concept that I read about, Tim, called the North Star metric. Have you heard of that?
yeah.
It's I really love it. It's because it paints a picture in your mind. So the North Star, it's really going back to the days of kind of sailing and compasses, but the North Star is the brightest star in the night sky, right? And it's directly north. So if you can see the North Star, you know where north is. And it's this idea of having a metric, and rather than having a map, like a specific roadmap of where you have to go and when, etc., you don't look at the map, you look at the star and you look to the metric and you say, what am I doing? And how is it steering me in the right direction towards the star in the sky? And the example you just gave, Tim, the shiny new thing that comes along, it sounds great, but is anyone actually really looking at it and thinking, okay, which direction is this taking us? It sounds as if no, it's maybe a very short term, maybe yeah, just kind of giving that short term efficiency, but not really reaching towards the long term goals.
Yeah. And so, as a leadership organization, your responsibility, your duty is to make sure that everybody has got these North Stars very, very firmly in mind. And even when there are other things that come in, people are still focused on the long-term importance of those bigger objectives. Smart, specific, measurable, achievable, resourced, and timetabled. The actual criteria there changes from time to time. I think from what I see most often is wishy-washy goals, which haven't been well defined. Yeah.
Mhm.
And OKRs, specific clarity on the objective, very specific clarity on the key result, and then specific clarity on the way that the thing that we're going to do. So the actual task that I'm going to do. And if there is a structure like that, then leadership can step back. Yeah, I mean, leaders are not there to do the work. They're there to step back and to allow others to do the work. And others will jump in and do that work, especially when they have been defining what those deliverables look like.
Yeah, I just want to add a quick thing on that. I always find it very funny that in a personal setting, it really reminds me of New Year's resolutions, which I think is the classic non-smart objective setting, right? Oh, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to stop smoking, I'm going to earn more money or whatever. Very rarely do they ever have any more meat to them than those things. And I've challenged people on that, and I've said, okay, you want to lose weight, for example, or exercise more. How are you going to do it? What's the plan here? What's the actual smart objective? And they get very frustrated with me and they say, well, I've told you I want to lose weight or I want to exercise more. So okay, and they feel as though willpower and just saying the words and putting the final goal there in a vague way is enough. And the fact of the matter, as we've all experienced with our own New Year's resolutions, I'm sure, is that that's not enough. The best way to ensure it's going to work is to build a framework and make sure that it's a smart goal. Tim.
And OKRs is a frustrating process because it creates lots of frustrating, uncomfortable discussions that didn't used to be there. Yeah.
Mhm.
So as soon as you get stuck into the discussions and the process, all of a sudden you're having discussions that you didn't used to have because somebody, the OKR coach, whoever that person is, whether it's internal or external, is saying, is that objective really an objective? Yeah. Is that really a key result? That's not measurable. How are you going to measure it? What is the impact going to be? Is there something more impactful? Is that really what you want to invest your time in? That's going to take 20 hours. Is there something that may be more sensible? So, the OKR process is an uncomfortable process. It puts not conflict, but it puts dissension and differences of opinion very firmly onto the agenda and into the meeting culture. And this is a good place to finish here. Our decision-making styles, we use this for leadership styles because basically most people have a default of either a directive or a cooperative style. Yeah. I'm sure all of the leaders looking at this now will say, yeah, I'm a bit more direct, I'm a bit more cooperative. Most people would probably say, I want to be more cooperative. But the reality is that situational leadership is the ability to switch between both. And this is the momentum and the change and the transformation that has been happening since the 1980s, and since the initiation of things like OKRs, yeah, but not just OKRs, balanced scorecard, KPIs, Hoshin Kanri matrix, the Toshiba methods of working, Six Sigma, yeah, and what we call them OKRs, and Scrum and Agile and Kanban boards, they all do the same thing. They all want people to work in a very cooperative way. They all want team members to make decisions and to be autonomous. And they all recommend a process of meetings and touch points, regular, once a week, twice a week, once every 2 weeks, where within the meetings themselves, so you don't create extra meetings, you use the meetings that you've got, where leaders and team members check in on the progress. And that's the direct element. So a leader who uses OKRs is benefiting because they're practicing a situational leadership ability and skill, which most leaders do not consciously practice. Yeah, so I'll say it bluntly, as bluntly as I can. Most leaders don't do it. They do not consciously exercise their situational leadership ability and this ability to manage cooperative project work in a direct and systematic way according to a methodology and a concept.